and the vice chair of the Equal Rights Amendment Caucus. Congresswoman, it's always good to see you. Trump's first inauguration met with riots in the streets of D.C., as well as counter-protests held around the world. Right now, tens of thousands of protesters are marching in D.C. to voice their opposition to Trump's accession. Why is it so important, Congresswoman, to keep hope alive at this time?
Well, we really have no choice. And as we're going into the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, I am reminded how every time in American history we have made progress on civil rights, on women's rights, there's been a backlash. And the only way we continue that progress going forward is to double down and stay committed and building towards the beloved community that he gave his life for. So for me personally, while I am sometimes angry that I'm fighting the same fights that my parents, my grandparents, and my great-grandparents fought, I do it so that my children and their children don't have to continue those fights. And I root myself in the joy and the love of making any progress and not letting anyone steal that joy as we face the backlash.
Let's talk about one of the battles that you have always been on the front lines for a while. You are the vice chair of the Equal Rights Amendment Caucus. Yesterday, President Joe Biden announced that the ERA should be considered a ratified addition to the United States Constitution, calling it the law of the land. Talk about how important this step is for Joe Biden to announce what he did, but let's also talk about what needs to happen next.
Well, first of all, it is a capstone for President Biden's career as a champion for women's rights, going back to when he was a senator and passed the Violence Against Women Act. And so it's the perfect capstone for his career. It is an important first step. I remind people it took 100 years after ratification of the 14th Amendment for the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to enforce it. And so while we can and should celebrate this moment, and I'm proud to have played a part in making Virginia the 38th state to ratify the ERA, we know there are going to be legal challenges, and we know it is not self-executing, and we have got to make sure that Congress acts to enforce it.
Let's switch gears to something that's going on in the Middle East that is of paramount importance. After 15 months of intense fighting with tens of thousands of deaths in Gaza, an always fragile ceasefire deal has been reached between Israel and Hamas. I want to underscore it's not the end of the war, but it is a ceasefire. Tomorrow morning at 1:30 a.m. Eastern time is when the ceasefire is supposed to start. How optimistic do you remain that it will last, though?
I am an eternal optimist, and so I am hopeful that this is a breakthrough that will begin the process of restoring peace and stability in the Middle East. But we have seen where we have been close to a ceasefire before and how fragile a ceasefire can be. We were in a ceasefire when the October 7th terrorist attack happened. So this is going to require vigilance and intention to ensure that this ceasefire leads to long-term peace.
Congresswoman, before I have to let you go, there are some folks that are not going to be attending Trump's inauguration on Monday. Are you going to be in attendance?
Weather allowing me to head up I-95, yes, I will be there.
Just to let the people tuning in, it's supposed to be at least 3 or 4 inches of snow and some frigid temperatures, as we know, on Monday. So that is what she's talking about. Congresswoman Jennifer McClellan, it's a pleasure, as always, to have you here. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
And for more, joining me now, I've got Hugo Lowell, senior political correspondent for The Guardian, and Christina Green.